Hello guys, welcome to my business studies channel. My name is Nurai and this is my email ad if you need to contact me concerning the content, or if you just have any questions, just drop me an email and I'll do my best to assist you as we go along. So we will be covering the business studies A-level and AS level Cambridge syllabus as of 2020, and I've develop these notes primarily from this text source over here. Alrighty, so let's get started. The first aspect we're going to look at is business and its environment, starting off with the enterprise. Okay, so we're going to go through our list of objectives, starting with discussing business and its purpose. We will look at the role of the entrepreneur. We will also look at social enterprises and possibly tackle some short and long answer questions. I think particularly the long answer questions because generally people have a little bit more difficulty with the long answer questions. Okay, and hopefully at the end of it everything will be great and we will all be happy. Awesome. So let's get started. The first thing that we want to look at is business and its purpose. And the key question that we want to ask is, what is a business anyway? And what is its purpose? So you and I are constantly engaged in business, from the many things that we buy to some of the things that we might sell or even trade. That's even business. So business is all around us. And this is just a definition I brought together from a lot of definitions out there, and I think this is quite comprehensive. Business can be defined as the organized efforts or activities of individuals working together to produce goods or services in order to meet specified measurable goals or targets, often with the intention of making a profit. Now, I know it sounds like a mouthful. You can always phrase this however you like, but there are certain keywords that you need to be cognizant of, and those are the words that are in bold. Business has to be organized. It has to be comprised of individuals working together. They have to be productive in producing goods and services. They have to meet specified measurable goals or targets. So ideally, when you're starting a business, you just don't start it haphazardly. You have to have specific goals. What is your intention with this business? Because if you have no set goals, it's difficult for you to measure your performance because you don't really understand what exactly you're measuring if you never had goals to begin with. Okay, you will notice I have used the word intention often over here because not all businesses are set up to make a profit, such as schools and hospitals. Schools and hospitals can be considered business, but they are not necessarily profit driven. Okay. Now, still on business and its purpose, we want to take some time and look at the transformation process, okay? And as an example, we're going to use Kellogg's, the company, and have a look at how the transformation process of Kellogg's is like when they are actually producing cereal. Okay, let's see if we can go. Alrighty, so I've just gone to the text source so we can discuss the transformation process. Alright, you will notice here in the transformation process, every transformation process has to begin with inputs. Inputs that are transformed into the output, and the transformation process is all about adding value to these inputs so that we can have goods and services that have perceived usefulness in the minds of consumers. Okay, so some of the inputs here, people. Okay, and I've written down a few notes there. People entails the quality of employees. Okay, quality in terms of their skills, their attitude. Also, it's important to consider the number of employees and whether or not you will be outsourcing. And outsourcing just basically refers to whether or not you will be hiring an external company to provide services to you. Possibly because, number one, they're better at what they do than if you were to do it yourself. or it is less expensive, and so it proves to be cheaper to actually outsource. And examples of this, we see that often catering companies. Maybe if you are in a business, you have an external catering company providing meals for your staff, that sort of thing. Okay, even cleaners particularly. Okay. Capital equipment includes durable goods that are used in the production of goods and services. These can either be fixed or movable. Examples of fixed capital equipment could be ventilators in a building or escalators. All of these things are fixed in that if you were to move, you cannot move with your escalators, okay? Movable capital equipment, this includes your cars, for example, or any other machinery that is movable, okay? That is movable capital equipment. Materials and components just basically refers to the resources that you need in order to actually produce an end product. The finance refers to your capital that you actually need to possibly buy all these inputs or to fund certain things as you get started, etc. Entrepreneurship basically refers to the skills that you require in order to transform the inputs to outputs and to manage that effectively, the whole process. Land entails your location, premises. Land has a great bearing as well on your process or your outcome, because certain location is just better for business than other places. Okay. Intellectual capital, here we're looking at the intelligence of the workforce in influencing the transformation process. Okay, for example, the quality of teaching in educational institutions will determine the grades that students get at the end. Okay, so hopefully if you're listening to me, you can say that the quality of teaching at your school is pretty good. I hope. Okay, so we come to the transformation process. Here is where value is added to these inputs so that they can become something worth exchanging. Okay, so value is created when the worth of outputs is more than inputs used to provide them through the process. Okay, so ideally, you need to ensure that what you're selling is profitable, basically, because that is how the profits return value to your business. Okay, if you're not being profitable, then there really isn't much to keep your business sustainable or to keep you going in the long term. So basically, you need to make sure that the process is generating value for you as a business. But just beyond you as a business, value is also created when there is perceived usefulness by the end user. So we have to look at value two ways: value for the end user and value for the business. Because if the end user does not perceive that your offering has any value, then, well, you know what? You might as well not produce whatever you are producing. Okay. Now, the outputs, of course, we will consider the quality and the quantity of your goods and services. You know, how much do you want to produce in a specified period of time? And your output could be physical products or intangible as well. For example, teaching or, knowledge, for example, it's not tangible. It's a service that is provided by educational institution. Outputs can also be waste products. Okay, now when it comes to value, you could be asked a question such as this: how can an organization increase its value? Now, if this was a short answer question, you could simply state these 2 points. Say it is worth 2 marks. You could say, well, a business can increase its value by reducing the cost of producing its products or services, and by increasing the perceived benefits. And that would be great. You could actually end there and get your 2 points. However, if it is a long answer question and you've been asked the same question, you cannot just state these 2 points. You now have to elaborate. When you say, for example, that they need to reduce cost of producing their services, another question you should ask yourself is how? How exactly do you do it? So for example, we can look at our inputs over there and consider how can we reduce costs when we look at our inputs. And I would think, for example, when it comes to people, now we see this now more than ever where um, certain processes are now being automated. So technology is in fact being used to improve the efficiency of processes that used to take a long period of time because of human effort. Okay, so now as a result of the technology, organizations have been able to decrease the number of people that are required in a process, thus reducing their remuneration costs, for example, for that particular process. Hopefully that these employees can obviously be skilled to do something else, not necessarily laid off completely. But the point remains that if certain processes can be automated, this can in fact reduce the cost of producing the goods and the services. If you look at the materials and the components, for example, you can also consider that perhaps we can change our supplier. Maybe you were buying from a middleman, and so you decide, well, instead of buying from the middleman, let me go directly to the person producing these resources and I'll buy them for myself. Or you could actually decide, perhaps we can grow some of the produce on our own, and in the long run, it will be more affordable, more sustainable. So you start to look at issues like that and you start to raise them up and you start to show how the cost can be reduced by just picking on certain aspects um, in the process. Okay, now how about increased perceived benefits? Okay, benefits to who? And I think here it's benefit to the end user. So how can value be increased? And how can we increase perceived benefits? And this can be done in different ways, and one of them is through marketing, because as you promote the product, it creates more awareness, and the point in creating more awareness is that you hope that it will generate more sales for you. So ideally, if you're having more sales, that's a good thing because it increases value for your business in terms of profitability. Okay. Also, you could find different uses for your current product, and you find out that, oh, apart from the one thing you thought your product could do, your product can also actually do something else, and you start to market it that way as well. So that's another point. Okay, good. We are doing good. Let's go back to the slides. Okay, now having covered the transformation process, having covered the transformation process, let's use Kellogg's for example. Just very basic cereal, because who doesn't like cereal? Now the inputs, of course, we know they're people, but when we consider the resources required, we consider grain. They need grain. They need maize or corn or oats, etc. That needs to be transformed. That needs to go through the transformation process in order for us to then have a box of cereal on the shelf. Okay, so ideally you'll notice here there's a key term at the bottom, and I will drop key terms at the bottom of every slide if in fact there is a key term relevant to that particular slide. So just take note of these and you will have to know how to define them and and examples of that. Okay, so primary sector here, that's the first stage of production, includes mining, farming, fishing, etc. So like I said, for the Kellogg's transformation process, there's a great reliance on farming because that's exactly where they get their grains from. Okay, I think we're doing great. Now, this process that we were just discussing doesn't always stay the same because of a lot of things, a lot of aspects that affect the process, all right? So a question is posed now. When is it necessary to change the process, the transformation process? Okay, You change it when there are, for example, changing consumer needs. Maybe consumers now require something different. Let's give an example of Volkswagen, VW, right now. VW is a car manufacturer. But now, due to the coronavirus that we're currently confronted with now, they are currently producing ventilators and equipment to contribute towards combating this virus. So consumer needs have shifted, and companies are also shifting what they are producing to meet that demand. Okay, competition. Basically, when other people are doing something new or doing something different that is in fact working, most businesses are compelled to shift in that direction. So competition and the pressure from competition can actually cause a business to change its process. Now, environmental factors, this is currently key at the moment. You'll find out that there is a lot of talk concerning climate change, global warming. Organizations are being challenged now more than ever to have sustainable development goals, stating how they're being responsible towards society, what they're contributing towards the environment, how they are adapting their business process in order to preserve the environment. So that matters quite a lot. You'll understand that some people want to know where you have sourced your resources from. Was it ethical? Was it, so there are a lot of questions rising up. So environmental factors are really shifting the way organizations produce their products. Of course, government regulations have a bearing on how you will function, because especially when it comes to people, for example, the government can decide that, well, a multinational or an international organization ought to also be comprised of a certain percentage of local, of the citizens in the nation. They give a certain percentage of how locals need to be represented, whether in management or in certain key positions. So that influences who you can employ, etc. And of course, epidemics, pandemics alter the business process, and we see this now more than ever, with technology, of course, really playing a key role in how this process is shifting, because, for example, there is now a greater need for connectivity, and the internet is playing a significant role in facilitating certain processes that we used to meet in person before, but now we're using technologies such as Zoom to continue being productive even as we work from different places. And if you're probably listening to this, you may have to be studying from home as a result of this pandemic. So the learning process for you has actually changed. The learning process for your institutions has shifted from a physical online classroom it's shifted from a physical classroom to an online classroom. Okay, I think we're doing great. Now, it's also important to consider this question. Why are businesses important? Why are businesses important? Well, businesses are important because, for one, they employ people. They pay people. So when people are employed and when they're paid, it gives them the ability to buy. It gives them the ability to function in the economy, because we all know that if you're living in a household, you know that there are bills to pay, there's fees to be paid, etc. So it allows people the ability to participate in an economy. Okay, they provide goods and services that are much needed. They generate income for an economy. And also businesses, particularly if the new businesses are booming, often challenge existing businesses, so it results in competition. And competition generally should improve quality of products, because now, because of an increase in competition, businesses think of ways of improving what they currently have in order to maintain or to even gain market share. All right. So ideally, as competition increases, this inspires growth and development in business. Fantastic. Now, let's look at choice and opportunity cost. And we'll start off by defining opportunity cost. Opportunity cost measures the sacrifice made in making a particular choice. You'll notice sacrifice is in bold because that is a key word. You can define, when defining opportunity cost, make sure that that word is, it's key. Okay, so it's a sacrifice. Like I said previously, VW is currently producing, ventilators. They could be producing cars, but they're not. So what is the opportunity cost? Now we have to sit, well, they have to sit and consider, what would we be making or generating if we had been producing our cars? Well, if, for example, if we had been producing our cars, we could have been making so much. But now we are producing ventilators, and so they sit and consider, well, is it worth it for us to produce ventilators and forego how much we could have been making if we had in fact been producing cars? And they look at those numbers, and based on calculated measures, they make an informed decision. Okay, so when making decisions, there's need to consider what the opportunity cost is. And opportunity cost is there all around us. Every time, for example, you could have $10, okay? And with that $10, you could think, what will I do with it? Whatever you do with that $10, you could have done something else with it. So in thinking about it, you consider, well, is this the best use of my $10? Is it the best use? And whatever you use it for, you have an opportunity cost in that you could have used it for something else. Okay, I hope that's clear. I think it's clear. Keyword, opportunity cost. We are doing great. So we've discussed business. We've just discussed opportunity cost. We've just discussed the transformation process. We've defined what it is. Now, we want to look at business and its environment. Okay, businesses do not operate in isolation, as you can see. Here is a business. Okay, and this business is linked to all these other businesses, organizations in its environment. It has middlemen, competitors, distributors, suppliers, institutions such as banks. The list goes on. All of these organizations form part of this business environment because businesses don't operate in isolation. Also, apart from these institutions that affect or influence this business, there's a greater environment here. It's commonly known, or the acronym for it is often PIST, a good way to remember it in exams, which is comprised of the political and legal. So political and legal issues, here we can consider, regulations that the government has, for example, in advertising or minimum wage, and that's pretty much the legal aspect. When it comes to political issues, we know that although it may not be desirable, but politics actually influences a lot of business policy by the choices that they make, perhaps different treaties that they may sign with other nations have a bearing on how businesses operate in a nation, okay? The economic environment, here we could consider other issues such as income, because what people earn affects the demand of certain products, all right? Cost of supplies, cost of borrowing. We spoke about inputs when we go back to the transformation process. We said finance is one of the inputs businesses require. So that is, the economic environment affects that greatly because it affects your ability to borrow, ability to lend, etc. Okay, now when we look at the social environment, we're looking at social issues, basic demographics, size and population, life expectancy. All of these things can affect the demand for your product because, your population will determine your market share, and how many, like, is your market share able to sustain your existing business? Because you can't just start a business and service few people, because ideally that might mean low profits. All right. Now, technological environment, which is a big issue right now, as we know that during this coronavirus period, technology is definitely influencing the way that businesses are functioning. All right. Technology can improve business processes, and it can also improve customer engagement. We know now that most businesses have online platforms where they sell their products, sell their services. Right now, as we speak, if you're learning on an online platform, your school is providing an online means of education, you are actually receiving a service in a different way, but it's been influenced now by technology, has helped to sustain business performance. So that's a good thing. Okay. Now you will notice this over here in red. I wrote there constant change. This environment, the business environment, is constantly changing. It's continually changing. So as a business, you cannot afford to be complacent. You have to consistently learn and understand what's the greater the greater environmental aspects, how they're influencing institutions that you work closely with, because that in turn will also influence you as a business. So you need to have management and leaders that have that vision to always think 2 steps ahead, especially in this season. We often find that everything changes so fast and so quickly. So businesses have to learn to adapt, always having to think of ways to ensure their survival. Otherwise, if you don't ensure your survival, you could be a leading organization today, and within a month, you could literally be replaced. You not only replaced, but you could no longer exist, and that would be a pity. Okay. So, you know what? A key question to consider here is, how can businesses become more competitive?